Well, good morning, channel. Let's start our review of my new Insta360 Ace Pro action camera. Now, there are a ton of reviews out there on this camera comparing it to everything from GoPro to Osmo Pocket. Plenty of stuff for you guys to reach out and find more information about how it might compare to what you are trying to decide on buying or what you may already have. I have GoPros. I have forever been a GoPro fanboy and have owned them for years and have moved up through the numbers. This is a Hero 10. I have not bought the Hero 12 because I was trying to decide, do I want the Hero 12 or do I want this Ace Pro? Both of them are very capable, wonderful cameras. So happy I've purchased both of them. So this is not going to be, hey, one's bad, one's good. Each one has its pros and its cons a little bit. I'm going to give you some stats on both of them. We're going to put them on the bike later and test them out, both of them, so you can see the difference. But this is not to slam one and prove the other. I want to show you some of the benefits that I think the Ace Pro has taken a step or two ahead of the GoPro. I'm sure the GoPro is going to catch up. Like I said, I'm going to keep this both very capable cameras. And there are, as I said, there are tons of videos out there, including Cruiseman's. Cruiseman does a wonderful job of reviewing this camera as it relates to motovlogging. So go check that out. That's one good video on the topic. And I will put down in the description below a couple of other video topics. I might even link them up here somewhere so that you guys can check out a couple of other really good videos that dive much deeper into this camera. I am going to review it and talk to you today about this camera as it relates to not only motovlogging, because that's what I do, but also photography, because that's also what I do. So anyway, join me. Right now I'm going to pause for a minute and let VoiceOver Guy tell you where the chapters are in this video so that you can skip ahead if there's certain sections you just don't care about. So go right ahead, VoiceOver Guy. Well, thank you, Robert. Folks, if you'd like to learn about this camera's form factor, that starts at timestamp 3 minutes, 16 seconds. But if you're here to learn about this camera's menus and functions, well, that starts at timestamp 16 minutes, 0 seconds. If you'd like to see a video comparison of both cameras, both in daytime and nighttime, 50 minutes, 57 seconds. All right, let's get started. All right, let's dive into the Insta360 Ace Pro. And before we get started, I want to let you know that I am not sponsored by Insta360. I am not sponsored by GoPro. All of the equipment you're seeing on this video I purchased with my own money and am reviewing as a consumer. What first attracted me to the Ace Pro was I kept seeing videos of its ability to take video at night and seemed to do such a better job than my GoPro does. And you guys have seen my videos before where I've been videoing early in the morning where it's dark outside, and with the GoPro the sensor just cannot capture enough light in low light situations to make stabilization work correctly. So it's sort of bouncy and just not very good video. So that's what caught my eye first on this. And so the reason it can capture great video in low light situations is it has a very large sensor. The sensor on this Ace Pro is 1/1.3 inches, which is 0.77 inches, versus a GoPro, which is 1/1.9 inches, and that equates to 0.53 inches. So a much bigger sensor on this thing, and that's what allows it to capture such good video in low light situations. The lens has an aperture of f2.6 fixed, and it's a 16 millimeter Leica lens. Now that was also impressive. If you know anything about photography, Leica is a very well-established, known brand for great quality. They're out of Wetzlar, Germany. They started over 100 years ago in 1914. Just an excellent company for producing lenses and camera equipment. Happy to see Leica on here. That is a definite plus for the Ace Pro. All right, continuing to look at the front, we see that it has a front screen just like the current GoPros do that will display simple information like your settings. It has, and I'll show you this in a minute, a very large indicator light that shows when you're recording. It's very easy to see. Much bigger indicator light than the GoPros. The camera has 3 microphones. This small dot here in the front is the front-facing microphone. There's a dot on the side for the side-facing, and another one on the top for top-facing microphone. That helps it collect sound in different ways, and we'll talk about that more when we go through the menu options. But that's pretty much the front. One element you'll hear everybody talk about is that this front lens cover does not come off. Just about every other action camera, you can remove the lens cover and replace it if it cracks or breaks. But with Insta360, what they offer instead is the ability, if you crack this lens cover, you can send it in and get a free replacement for up to a year, I believe. You just have to pay for shipping, getting it there and getting it back, but they will replace it free. And when you stop to think about it, when's the last time, I mean, I've had GoPros for years. I have never once cracked or scratched the glass on the front over the lens. So not really a big deal to me. The power button is over here on the side, and normally there's a door right here. I've taken the door off because I have purchased this optional media connection, the 360 media connection, which snaps right in where the door would snap, just like that, and allows me to put my 3.5 microphone jack for the Rode wireless system in here, and then it's still got the USB-C charging port right here, so you don't lose the charging port by putting that on. Also on the side, the micro SD card goes in right here. It takes a super fast micro SD card if you're filming in 4K 60. I noticed with an older card that I tried when the camera first arrived that it was freezing up a bit, but I ordered this SanDisk Extreme. Sorry, I wrote over it so you can't really see it, but it says SanDisk Extreme 256 gigabyte, and that seems to work just fine in 4K. Continuing on the other side is the battery door. So you just pull the whole thing down, it's kind of spring-loaded, pulls down and raises up, and the battery sits in here. Okay. Batteries are a little bit larger than the GoPro batteries, just slightly larger than the extended use GoPro batteries. But the thing I like about these batteries is they have fast charging. The fast charging allows this battery to go from 0 to 80% charged in 22 minutes. And it's charged by USB over here. Then a full charge to 100%, from 0 to 100% in 46 minutes. Compared to a GoPro, which as you guys know takes 2 or 3 hours to fully charge. Very impressive charging on this camera. Another standout feature for this camera that everybody talks about is this flip-up screen. It has a couple of rubber points here on each side that you push in and can lift this up. See, it locks in place. Push and lift this up. So if you're doing vlogging, if you're just walking around vlogging, look at this. It pops straight up and you can see yourself. Let's turn it on. You can see yourself while you vlog. That is a great, great feature. It leans down so you can make it a stand if you want. If you're taking time lapse or whatever, you don't happen to have your tripod with you, you can do that. If you're taking video from up top and you want to be able to see what you're videoing, you can do that, flipping the screen that way. And there's that indicator light on the front that shows it's recording, and see how big it is. That's easily visible from any distance, motorcycle or otherwise. Okay, this screen, this back flip screen, is a 2.4-inch flip screen that is touch sensitive. So you can touch it to bring up all kinds of things. We'll talk about the settings in just a minute, but it is touch sensitive. All right, let's talk about the mount for a minute. It comes with a standard mount in the box when you get it, but I purchased a little more robust mount, and you'll hear people talk about it being a magnetic mount. It's not really a magnetic mount. It is magnetically guided. If you try to put this backwards, it won't sync up with the holes. The magnet pushes it away from where it's supposed to sit. But if you turn it the right way, the magnet pulls it into place, and it is firmly locked into place with these two push buttons on either side, which retract these hooks. It is connected by hooks, not by a magnet. So those of you who are worried about, well, can't put a magnet mount on a motorcycle, it's going to rattle right off. That is not the case. Both with the standard mount that comes with the camera and this little more expensive accessory mount that is also Insta360, it is firmly held in place by those hooks. And this particular mount, this accessory mount, allows you to lock this thing. So now you cannot accidentally push those buttons on either side and have it come off. It is locked into place. See that lock symbol? Okay. Also on the bottom of this accessory mount is your typical GoPro type connectors. If you want to connect it to any kind of GoPro connection in any way, you can do it that way. It also has a 1/4-20 threaded hole back here so that you can connect it to your tripods or any 1/4-20 screw. Very versatile. You can use this in a number of different ways. It's a pretty strong magnet too. And once it locks into place, those hooks automatically engage, and I'm telling you, those don't come out. We'll talk about this in more detail, but through this USB port, you can also connect it directly to your computer, and this thing becomes like an external hard drive. You can pull your video files directly off the camera to your, say, MacBook Pro through this USB connection directly to the MacBook. It just acts like an external drive. That is super cool. Also, one other thing about this camera and this lens and this sensor, when you switch it over into photo mode instead of video mode, this will take photos at 48 megapixels. That's just a massive size photo compared to a 27 megapixel on the GoPro. Another thing to note, this camera is waterproof up to 10 meters, I believe, about 30 feet. Unless you have, one thing to be careful about is if you have installed this extra media mod like I have here, you have removed the watertight door to get this on. There is a watertight door that's normally in this place. So when you have this added, you lose all waterproofing on this camera. So it is not waterproof with this on, okay? So just know that. But if you take this off, you put the normal door back on, it is waterproof up to 10 meters. Guys, one other amazing feature about this 360 Ace Pro camera is its ability to pause and restart video. Let me show you. I'm going to hit play or record here. It starts recording, and there's a button here on the screen that looks like a pause button. Let's say you're out taking a vlog video or something out in the field, and there's something interesting going on way over in the other, other part of the scene, you can hit pause on this, and it will pause the recording, allow you to go over to that other area that's more interesting now, and hit start again, and it will pick up right where it left off recording. Now you're in a different place, and it's all one clip. It's not two clips like on a GoPro you would have to stop and start a new clip. With pause recording, you can pause it and start recording again in a different time, different place, and have it all be one clip. And then if you want to just stop recording altogether, you hit this button over here. That is so cool. Okay, let's take a moment and go through the menus and features of this Insta360 Ace Pro camera. We're going to start with the menu that's default on the back of the screen when you turn the camera on. Let's talk about what's on this real estate. In the top left corner here, you can see a representation of my SD card with the hours and minutes of recording time I have left on this card, determined by the space on the card and the video settings that you have set, in this case 4K 30. It'll change depending on those video settings. Anyway, a constant reminder of how much time you have left. In the top right corner, you'll see an indicator of battery life. In the bottom left corner, you will see your current video settings, 4K 30. You can touch that and you'll be able to change that from there. Then on the bottom right corner, you will see field of view settings. Right now it's set to ultra. The widest field of view is called action. Next step down as it narrows in is called ultra. And then last is de-warp. De-warp takes away the fisheye look from ultra, sort of removes that fisheye and makes it look more like a photo rather than an action camera video. And then last here you have an option for horizon lock. If you've ever done any work with GoPros or action cameras before, you're probably familiar with horizon lock. It locks your horizon, so if your camera's moving back and forth, left or right, the horizon stays locked in the frame. Okay, to access menus on this camera, other than the default menu that comes up on the screen here, you do a series of swipes. You can swipe from the top down, you can swipe from the bottom up, you can swipe from left to right, and then again from right to left on the screen. And lastly, you can put your finger in the middle of the screen and swipe left or right, and we'll talk about what comes up each time you do one of these next. Okay, let's start with swiping left to right. What that's going to do is bring up your video library, what's been saved on the card already. Now it comes up in one single video default screen view here, but if you touch on the icon in the top right corner, it will bring it up in squares so you can see up to 4 on your screen at one time and scroll up or down to get to others. I only have 2 videos on this camera right now, so it's only showing 2. But this gives you sort of a catalog of what you've already got saved so that you can select and edit. Okay, if we swipe from the right, you're going to see it brings up video settings. Okay, video or photo settings, not camera settings, just video or photo. And there's 2 modes. There's auto mode and there's manual mode. Right now it's showing auto mode. So let's go through these options below auto mode. The first one being that standard icon there. If you touch that, what this brings up is a set of color grading templates. Right now it's set to standard, but you can scroll up and pick different ones. Vivid, flat, biking 1 and 2, urban 1 and 2, snow 1 and 2, which I believe handles the bright snow, Night 1, Night 2, Ocean 1, and Ocean 2. So you can play around with those, but each one sort of sets a certain color grading to your video. I just keep it on standard. The others have special uses that I might use in the future. It comes default on standard. All right, next is exposure compensation. The little icon over here, still under auto, that says EV plus or minus. The camera does a really good job of trying to properly expose the video for whatever scenario you're in. Bright light, shady indoors, but sometimes you want to help the camera do even more. Like in the case where you're out in bright light, you may want to dial back the exposure compensation to say -0.5 or -1 so that it sort of retains those highlights, darkens down those highlights a little bit so you don't lose data in the highlights. The camera does a good job, but sometimes you got to help it by setting the exposure compensation. Likewise, if you're in a gym taking video of sports, maybe a basketball game, and the lighting's not the greatest, you may want to go the other way. Go plus 0.5 or plus 1 on the exposure compensation. Just depending on what your settings. In other words, help the camera do more than what it's thinking is necessary. And you'll find certain instances where this will be very helpful. All right. Next one down over here where it says matrix. That is, what is the metering mode? Now, what's metering? Metering is where you're telling the camera what do you want to look at in order to set the correct exposure and white balance. So you have two options here. Face priority, so if you're doing vlogging, you want the camera to look at your face and set the lighting so that your face is always appropriately lit, not dark and shadows or whatever. So you're going to pick face in that case. But if you're not doing something where your face is the primary subject, then you may want to do matrix, which takes a look at the entire screen and appropriately sets light for the camera. So we're going to leave it on matrix for now. The next icon over here where it says off is low light stabilization. If you're in that situation like a gym and there's a lot of action and you're sort of moving around as you're videoing, you might want to set low light stabilization. Or in my case, when I'm on the bike at night and I'm videoing from the bike, I might want to turn on low light stabilization's AI chip enabled function that helps stabilize better in low light situations. Right now I'm going to leave it off. Okay, scrolling up, the last two at the bottom here we have white balance. Right now it's on auto. In other words, the camera's picking the white balance. You also have the option of manual. So what does white balance do? Primarily, it controls how cool or warm your clip looks. Right now it's on 3800K Kelvin. If I was to start reducing that number, you would see how cool the picture starts getting. It turns blue pretty much. If I increase the white balance, go the other way with it, you'll see that it warms up, turns quite a bit more yellow here at 6500K. So you can set that manually if you don't like the way the auto setting is portraying your scene. If it's not real to life, you have the option of setting it manually. Otherwise, just keep it on auto and let it do its thing. All right, and then last down here, the triangle is video sharpness. Now I'm leaving it on medium. I haven't really tried the others yet, but I've seen enough YouTube videos that say, you know what, you put this on high or highest and it starts making the scene look a little unrealistic. You want to keep it on medium for the most realistic look. Now I haven't tested that. That's just what I've seen other people do and other people say about the high and highest settings. So I'll be trying that out later, but this is where you set the sharpness on your video. I'm leaving it on medium. Now when you jump from auto over here to manual, really only a couple of things on this screen change. you now have the option to set the shutter speed, which is that little circle icon, for whatever you would like. The higher the shutter speed, the more you're going to freeze action. The lower the shutter speed, you know, the more smooth and sort of cinematic your video might look. So you have the option of setting that manually or just hitting auto and let it set itself. And then next, when you're on the manual setting, for the video settings, you can set ISO down here in the middle. This is another thing that's new when you tap on manual. And ISO, again, is set to auto, but under manually, you can set it yourself. Now, what is ISO? ISO sort of controls the sensitivity of your sensor. The lower the ISO number, the less sensitive your sensor is, but it creates a cleaner image. If you set it for higher numbers, it will be more and more sensitive to light. In other words, it'll do better in darker situations. But there's a danger in that sometimes it introduces a little bit of graininess into your video. So you want to kind of, as a general rule, I try to keep ISO as low as possible, unless the lighting conditions just will not let you video in the lowest ISO. Okay, that's everything in the menu when you swipe from the right, okay? Now we're going to swipe down from the top. And when you swipe down from the top, you get a set of camera settings. These are not video settings necessarily, they are camera settings. And there are 8 icons on this screen, and there are 2 screens of icons. So 16 total icons for these camera settings, and we're going to go through each one of them one by one. The first one in the top left corner here, already in blue with the little rocket symbol there, is called Quick Capture. Now, what is Quick Capture? Well, if you've ever dealt with a GoPro or any action camera, a lot of times they have this thing called Quick Capture. Normally, when you're going to record a video, the first thing you have to do is turn on the camera from a button on the side, and then press the record button on top. It's a 2-step process. Quick Capture eliminates the need for 2 steps and brings it into one. You no longer have to hit the power button. If Quick Capture is enabled, blue like this, then you could take a completely off camera and press the record button, and it does 2 things at once. It turns the camera on and it starts recording. And then when you press the record button again, it will stop the recording and turn the camera off. It saves time. Okay, the next icon over to the right is that little lock with a circle arrow around it. That is an information lock. What do they call it? They call it rotation lock. All right, so when that is not enabled, the data you see on screen, the default screen, if you were to turn the camera sideways, the data flips over sideways so you can still read it. In other words, the rotation is not locked. But if you turn rotation lock on, then when you turn the camera sideways, you will notice the data stays in the horizontal position. It does not flip over to the portrait position like this. That's what information lock or rotation lock does for you. All right, next, the little hand symbol here is gesture control. You can control this camera, both video and photography, by using gestures. If you turn gesture control on, then you can start and stop recording a video by simply showing your palm, as it's shown here in this example, this little guy throwing up his hand. When the camera sees your palm, it will start recording, and then when it sees your palm again, it will stop recording. Very similar for photos. You put it in photo mode, and then you hold up the peace symbol. See, he's got 2 fingers he's holding up there. That will take a photo. It'll give you a little countdown and take the photo. This allows you to operate your camera remotely just by gesturing to it, so you can be away from the camera if it's on a tripod or something. All right, very similarly, the last icon here on the top row is voice commands. You can enable that, and then your camera will react to your voice commands. You can say things like, start recording, stop recording, take a photo, and the camera will act on your voice commands. All right, moving down to the next row under pre-recording. Pre-recording is, have you ever run into an instance where you got your camera, you're in a high action area and there's something cool going on and you want to capture it on video, so you hit record, but you didn't quite hit record soon enough, or you couldn't get the camera turned on soon enough? Well, what pre-record does is when you enable pre-record, the camera is recording all the time in the background, so that when you actually push the record button, it can back up 15 seconds and start your clip from there. That way, if you just missed a bird in flight or a vehicle coming by or a great shot by a basketball player, you can hit that record button with this enabled and it will go back 15 seconds and you will have captured that moment in time. That's what pre-recording does. All right, next you have AI Assist, second one, bottom row. What that does is it will analyze your clip and pick out what it thinks is the highlighted parts, the best parts of your clip, and create little mini sections of that clip within your video. And it will show you those mini sections because it thinks you might want to grab those and use those as just your clip from that point forward, so you can truncate it down to the highlights. Well, you can either go through it yourself and pick out your own highlights, but this AI chip generated function looks at your video and tells you what it thinks the highlights of your video is, and sometimes that's very helpful. It's quite possibly right, and then it's very easy through the app, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to gather those up and make a video out of the highlighted items. That's what the flag symbol AI is right there. Okay, moving over to the next icon, third in line, but on the bottom row, is the brightness function, screen brightness. Right now it's set to 100. You can see how bright that is. You can drop it all the way down to 0, but 0 does not black it out. 0 just dims it quite a bit, and that's helpful if you're in an environment where the light might interfere with others or bother others and you want to sort of keep it down. And then you have the lock button. Now, similar to the information lock we talked about before, this lock button basically turns off the touchscreen altogether so that you don't accidentally change a setting in the middle of your recording or whatever, or when you're handling the camera. If you've got your camera set on the settings you want and you don't want it to change, you can enable that lock and it will lock the screen and not let you do anything. And then you slide up to unlock it. Okay, that's everything on this screen. We're going to go to the second set of 8 icons here. The first one is the sound button. That just dictates the level of the sound that this camera will produce. Right now I've got it on high. We'll go through these options and just listen. So it basically just turns down and turns up the little beeps, the little haptics you hear on the phone, on the camera itself. Next is the indicator light. What is the indicator light? Well, on the back it's this little blue light over here, and then on the front it's the big blue light down here. This icon turns that off and on. All right, next, this little hashtag symbol icon turns on the grid on the back screen, the rule of thirds grid, if you will, in photography terms, that helps you compose your photo or compose your video better. So if you like a grid on your back screen, that's how you turn it on. The next icon is the sound icon. And you remember we talked about 3 different holes on this camera where microphones exist. Well, you have the option of picking stereo, which grabs sound from multiple microphones. You have wind reduction, which I believe still grabs the same source for sound, but digitally cuts down the amount of wind noise that you're hearing. And then directional focus pulls sound from only that front-facing microphone. So if you're doing a vlog and you've got the camera facing you, it picks up your voice only from that front, well, I say only, primarily from that front-facing microphone. Those are the only three options for sound here. We're going to leave it in stereo. All right, down here on the second row, left-hand side, there's a timer, a video timer. So what would you use a video timer for? Well, let's say you wanted to capture a beautiful sunrise, so you set your camera up on a tripod and you can set this timer for it to start recording at, say, 5 a.m. when you really don't want to get up to turn the camera on. And you can take a time lapse of the sunrise. It'll start all by itself and run for a specific amount of time and turn off. So that timer allows you to set a time for start and stop of the camera. Next is the remote connection. This camera comes with a pretty nifty remote sold separately. It's kind of expensive, but it looks sort of like an Apple Watch and provides GPS data and all kinds of other information. Also lets you to control the camera from your wrist on this little remote. It has a strap, like a watch strap, that it fits in. You can wear it like a watch, or you can strap it onto the handlebar of a bicycle or a motorcycle. It's a cool remote. I don't own the remote. I didn't buy it because I have a way. You can also control this through the app on your phone, and that's what I'm going to use as a remote, is my phone to control this. Next over is the AirPods. It looks like a pair of AirPods, but that's how you connect a set of Bluetooth headphones, whether that be earbuds or over-the-ear headphones. As long as they're Bluetooth, you can set that up right there. And then we get to this last icon, the one that looks like a cog. There's a lot here, so we're going to go through this menu option in depth. First, there's camera information. Next, there's general. And under general, there's different settings like vibration. This is the haptics on the camera. So if vibration is turned on, every time you hit record or change a setting, not only does it make that sound, but it makes you can feel it in the camera, a little vibration. Long press to record, to cancel recording. This is a cool function of the 360 camera that I haven't seen on any other action cameras. Here's what it does. I've got it enabled. Let's go take a look. So for long press recording, canceling recording, here's what it means. Have you ever started, I know I have done this, you ever start recording something and you just screwed up and you know you're not going to keep that clip, you really want to delete that clip? Long press cancel recording allows you to immediately delete it. Let me show you. I'm going to press the record button. We're going to record a little bit here. And now let's assume I realize I've screwed up and I don't want to keep this. All I have to do is hold down the record button for a little while. And it brings up, you saw that little red circle, and then it brought up this little menu. It says cancel recording. It's now deleted that clip, and you no longer have to go in separately and delete it later. Okay, so that's what long press to cancel recording does. Bluetooth wake up, enable that, and I believe it just wakes your camera up through Bluetooth connection. External mic gain. If you have, say, like a Rode mic attached to this camera through this media port, if you have an external mic attached to the camera, this external mic gain allows you to change, increase or decrease the volume of what it's capturing through that microphone. Auto power off. How long with no activity do you want this camera to stay on before it turns itself off and saves battery? Right now I've got it set for 3 minutes. You can go 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or never. We're going to stay with 3 minutes. Screen auto sleep. I've got it set for 90 seconds. If I don't touch this back screen, it will go dark after 90 seconds. Let's see what our options are here. You can go as small as 5 seconds. I've got it set for 90. 3 minutes or never. Screen off during recording. You can also do that here. All right. Front screen display. You remember on the front of this camera there is a screen that gives you basic information. You can turn that front screen on or off by using this toggle switch. touch to activate when off. Okay, if the screen turns off and you want it to come back on, you enable this so that you just touch the screen, it comes back alive. Okay, that's pretty much everything there is under General. Now we're going to scroll up. I'm going to skip over Wi-Fi settings. That just connects your camera to the Wi-Fi. Power off charging. If this camera is turned off and you hook it up to a power source to charge the battery inside the camera, how do you want the camera to react when you plug it into power? There are three options. There is charge only. That's what I have it set on right now. There is charge and power on, so that let's say you're running low on battery, but you're still capturing moments in life, and so you want to hook it up to power and still be able to record video. So when you hook it up to power, you want it to charge and turn on so you can use it. That's what this setting is. And then charge and record. Now what that does is, think of it as a dash cam. Anytime a dash cam gets power from your car, in other words, you've turned your car on, it automatically starts, it not only just turns on, but it starts recording as well. That's what you want this camera to do. When you hook it up to a power source, you want it to instantly start recording, like a dash cam. All right, scrolling up from power off charging, you see image settings. And under image settings, you see anti-flicker. Sometimes you get a flicker in the halogen lights, depending on what country you're in or whatever. You can leave it set on auto, which I have it here. If you're in the US, you probably want to use 50 hertz. If you're in Europe, you might want to use 60 hertz. That will help moderate any flickering you see in the resulting video. Next menu option in line is video encoding. This is basically your video codec. Most often people use H.265. You can also use H.264. I think H.265 has a few more color options. It's just a better setting. Next option down on this menu is bitrate. And options here are high and standard. A high bitrate is a more fluid and nice video. You can use standard, it'll probably come out fine, but if you use high, you're going to get the best quality video from the camera. But the downside of that is high bit rates take up more space on your card. It makes a larger file. Okay, now we've moved out of image setting. Let's just keep going down. Language, you can pick English. Date and time is where you set the correct date and time. SD card, I want to talk about SD card for a minute. You go in here, it will show you what SD card you have in there, the size, and it gives you an option to format an SD card. I would suggest to you, anytime you buy a new SD card to use in this camera, that you format it through this option to enable it to work and operate correctly with this camera. All of them will, but it's optimized when you format it inside the camera like this. Now, I do have a caution. Be careful. If you format an SD card, if there's any data, any videos, or anything on that card, it's going to get wiped clean when you format it. So just be aware of that when you're formatting an SD card. Okay, so far we have swiped from the left, we have swiped from the right, and we have swiped down from the top. Let's swipe up from the bottom. When you do that, it brings you to the video, or if you're in the photography mode, the photo settings. There are some icons across the top, so we're going to go through each one of them. The first one is stabilization. When you touch that, it brings you to a place where you can choose the stabilization mode for the camera. Off, no stabilization whatsoever. Low, standard, and high. Now this stabilization is day, night, it's for everything you do. Remember earlier we talked about a stabilization that was for low light only. That's not this. This is stabilization for normal use, any other time, okay? Next is ratio. What aspect ratio do you like to shoot in? I like 16:9 because that's what YouTube videos use, and that's my primary purpose for this camera. But you also have the option to select 4:3. Slightly more square than 16:9, not perfectly square, but that's another option. And then this cool ultra wide option 2.35 to 1. Makes it very widescreen, almost cinematic look here. Very cool. I'm going to be testing out that aspect ratio as well in some of my videos. Active HDR. What does HDR do for you? It stands for High Dynamic Range. In other words, whatever you're filming has a lot of highlights in it and a lot of shadows all at one time. Your camera will struggle to not get the highlights blown out and not lose any data in the shadows. So if you turn HDR on, it will help the camera not do that. It will make better videos, not blowing out highlights and bringing in some of the data in the shadows, a little more than just the standard setting. So if you find yourself sort of outside, let's call it bright sunlight, but you're videoing in some trees or something that has a lot of shadows, you're going to want to turn HDR on. And it also makes the colors a little more vivid. And then last, we have duration. Of the 4 menu items across the top here, duration. How long do you want this to record? You can set it to infinity, what I've got set here. That will record for as long as you push that button and until you push the button again to stop recording. Or you can have it record for a set amount of time, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, all the way up to, I believe, 3 hours of recording time, and it will stop after 3 hours. You don't have to push the stop button. All right, moving down a line on the screen, you see resolution. The Insta360 Ace Pro is the first action camera that allows you to record in 8K. Now, I'm not sure I'll ever use 8K because, to be honest with you, the places I share videos like social media and even most TVs today, people just don't have the ability to see 8K, to recognize 8K, say above 4K. So I'm not sure I'll ever be using 8K. It's nice that it's there. It only gives you a frame rate of 24 frames per second. That is the only setting under 8K, the only frame rate under 8K. So it's very limited, but it can do it. 4K is where I'm going to spend most of my time, and from 4K you can take video, you can set a frame rate of 24 frames per second, which is standard film, all the way up to 120 frames per second if you would like to do slow motion video. Very cool. When you jump down here to 2.7K, pretty much the same settings. And then you get down to 1080p, which ironically is the lowest resolution setting on this camera. Do you guys remember when 1080p was all the rage a long, long time ago? Everybody had to have a 1080p TV. Well, now we've come along in technology such that it is now the lowest resolution on many devices, and that is the case here. Now, the cool thing about 1080p here is it doesn't stop at 120 frame rate. You can go up to 240 frame rate, ultra slow motion. I bet there's some situations where that would be really cool, so I'm going to play with that at some point too. Okay guys, we have swept from the left, we have swept from the right, we have swept from the top, and we have swept from the bottom. The only thing left to do is stick your finger in the smack middle of the screen and swipe left to right, and that will change the modes that the camera is operating in. It will go from video to pictures, say. Let's go through all the modes available to us. See? I swiped from the middle, put my finger in the middle of the screen and swipe left or right, it doesn't matter. So you have an option here to go from video to pure video. Now pure video takes night videos and helps enhance the light in night videos. I'm going to give you an example of that at the end of this video so you can see the difference. But that's what pure video does. You can go to free frame video, time shift, time lapse, loop recording, like loop recording if you're doing a dash cam or something, you just want to record a few minutes then record over the same few minutes. Slow motion recording, which automatically sets 4K 120 for slow motion. Star lapse, burst photos if you want to take multiple photos at one time, interval photos, HDR photos, regular photos, and then back to video. Those are the options. But to get to those options, you put your finger in the middle of the screen and swipe left or right. You can also cycle through a couple of those options just by hitting the power button a few times. It'll go from video to photo to time-lapse, those three. And this is a customizable screen. You can add more modes on here, like star trails or burst photo if you want. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for the menu options and features of this great little camera. It does some things that are simply amazing, a step or two above the GoPro in my mind. But now it's time for the proof in the pudding. Let's take this and the GoPro out on the bike for a daytime ride right now, and in a little bit a nighttime ride, and I'm going to throw up the side-by-side video so you guys can see the difference between the GoPro Hero 10 and the Insta360 Ace Pro. Let's go. Alright guys, here we go. The daytime trial between the GoPro Hero 10, I don't have a GoPro 12, so 10 will have to do, and the Insta360 Ace Pro action cameras. Both cameras are recording in 4K 30. Both cameras have stabilization set on standard. Both cameras have exposure compensation set to 0. And so I don't expect you to see a lot of difference, to be honest with you, during the day. Because it's nighttime or low light video where the Ace Pro really shines, but during the day like this, I want to say they're pretty on par. Both amazingly good cameras. GoPro has been doing stabilization for a lot longer, so maybe they have the slight edge in stabilization. We'll see. I apologize for the wind noise. I had to remove the windshield off the bike because it was interfering with the video, and I didn't want it to interfere with the video. I wanted this to be a very clean comparison. And man, what a difference that windshield makes, even at the lowest setting. You can sure tell when it's not on here. So what do you guys think? And of course, it's not that I'm going to use one camera or the other. Most likely I'll be using both of these cameras for my motovlogs going forward. The GoPro Hero 12 on the bike facing me, sort of the backwards angle that you guys normally see in my videos. And then the new Ace Pro here facing forward, attached to my helmet. Hopefully recording much more stable video than, especially at night, low light situations specifically, than the GoPro was. I think tomorrow on my do the test for the low light early in the morning when I'm off to breakfast in the morning, I'll probably keep the cameras in the trunk while I'm on the freeway, and then as I exit the freeway I'll pull off to the side and put them on and set it all up and get it rolling, because I'll be traveling much slower on the side streets
heading to a wake, and I won't have to worry about the wind on the freeway blowing these things backwards. Anyway, this is it. Audio is only on the GoPro 10 right now, as the Rode wireless mic is set up on that camera, capturing audio for me, so I won't have a test of audio on the Rode from the Ace Pro, but I can't imagine there's much difference in the audio, to be honest with you, especially if it's being channeled through these Rode wireless mics. Hello, squirrel. Please get back out of the road, squirrel. Thank you. I'm going to try them both on 4K 60, but man, those files get big. We're up to 8 minutes of filming right now. 8 minutes on 4K 60 is a big file. So I'll use 4K 60 sparingly when I know I want to get some slow motion or whatever. Otherwise, 4K 30 is going to be just fine for me. Alright guys, gonna wrap this up. Now let's go try it at night. Ready, set, go.